Good morning. I'll be quick. My name is David Lucchino. I have the pleasure of introducing my friend, Kathy Giusti, who is with us today. And a lot can be said about Kathy, but what I really want to emphasize are two key points. Kathy really demonstrates on an ongoing basis leadership at the exact moment of potential crippling adversity. At age 37, she was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. She was a young mother, a very successful business professional, and really, at that moment, made the decision not only to transform her life by her actions, but the lives of many other patients to come years and years down the line. And that leadership is really manifested by the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation. And what you need to understand about the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation are three key points: results, innovation, and urgency. And everything that Kathy does in leading that organization is focused on helping patients, doing it with a deep sense of urgency, and constructively breaking the rules and bringing people together in a way to help patients and make people live longer more quickly. And Kathy has numerous awards: Harvard Business School, top of her class at the University of Vermont, Fortune Magazine number 19 on a outstanding 2013 Global Leadership Award. But I think I wanted to really emphasize those two key points to Kathy. What we're going to now see is a video from the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation, and then Kathy is going to come up and say a few words. Thank you.
Cancer sucks. It just sucks. It just sucks worse when it's your father or your friend or, someday you. And with this particular form of cancer, there is a lot of hope and a lot of things on the horizon, and it's really exciting. But it needs support, like anything.
I was diagnosed 4.5 years ago. Every once in a while, it comes back and haunts me. Probably like every other day.
When it's your dad's life or when it's somebody close to you, the last thing you need is any kind of holdup.
A funding organization will put out a request for proposals. There could be 100 grants submitted, could be 1,000 grants submitted. They're then critically evaluated and ranked, and the ones with the best science will get funded. It's a very, very competitive game. Competition is good, competition is healthy, but at the same time, it can be divisive.
What MMRF has done such a good job of pushing is the idea that as soon as you get a piece of information, you should be sharing that. It's the difference between a cycle time that might be a year and a cycle time that might be weeks. We get so many more turns of the cycle, and progress goes so much faster if people share.
At the MMRF, we saw a cancer research system that was broken. We understand that academic centers have to publish in order to keep their businesses going. We understand that pharmaceutical companies have shareholders they need to report to. But at the end of the day, what we did as a trusted third party was we brought academic centers, pharmaceutical companies, patients all together and said, what can unite us?
When I joined the MMRF in 2002, there had been no treatments approved for more than 30 years. Patients were living just 3 to 5 years from diagnosis. Since then, we have played a critical role in approving 6 new treatments for multiple myeloma that have led to the doubling of patient lives.
No other cancer research organization has a better track record of success. They're my strength, my foundation, my support.
I think the most important thing the MMRF is doing as we move forward is building the largest, most robust, integrated data set in cancer.
It is a very valuable resource for drug development scientists, clinicians, and patients, frankly, as they understand what type of myeloma disease do I have, because it's not one thing. So which one am I most like?
Part of the work that we're doing is to dissect the genetic information from a patient with myeloma. We want to capture every letter of the 3 billion letter alphabet that's in the cancer genome and be able to put that information in a readily available, understandable fashion for physicians to use. We're fortunate to have a clinical program on top of a research program, and it really directs us, it leads us. It's one of the reasons why MMRF has been so successful is to align the clinical questions first and bring underneath them the tools and technologies to really make a difference for our patients.
We will start to be able to sequence treatments for patients, get to longer remissions, and eventually a cure.
If we started out with the intention to cure all cancer and eradicate it from the face of the earth, we'd fail immediately. It would be like trying to consume the elephant one bite. It's not possible, right? But if we figure out a way to overcome the fundamental challenges that face us in this particular disease, and myeloma specifically, there's nothing that's going to prevent us from being able to translate that to other cancer types, because this is the most diverse.
All these cancers are miswiring cells in very similar ways, and discoveries from skin cancer, particular genes mutated there, are turning up in multiple myeloma. It means we can move faster because we can draw on knowledge from one cancer to accelerate knowledge in another cancer. It's about one problem, cancer.
There are many kinds of cancer that can already be cured. There's still a long ways to go for others, but it's now estimated that 1 in 20 Americans are walking around and they're cancer survivors. That's why those of us who are working in the area have more than just hope that you can make big impact if we hurry and keep the intensity.
The same way MMRF has brought together the multiple myeloma community, we now need to bring together the whole cancer community.
There is not a better time than right now. And if we can get everybody on our side, we will find cures so much faster. We drive toward results. We have never let anyone down. And we will continue to be a winning team, never taking our foot off the pedal as we accelerate cures.
No one has fueled more studies, initiated more trials, developed more treatments, or introduced more medicines. They've had a far greater impact than any other organization. They are curing cancer now.
Without a doubt, MMRF is going to have played a huge role in the defeat of this, without a doubt.
Thank you so much, and thank you, David, for that incredibly kind introduction. Thank you, MassBio, for inviting me to be here today and share our model. And it's just great. I have worked with so many of you over the years, and it's wonderful to be back with colleagues and peers and also see some new faces as well. Today, MassBio asked me to cover with you the model that we developed at the MMRF, a collaborative model. And the reason that we want to discuss that with you is because it's not that we are the only model. You know, in myeloma, we've done incredibly well, but we are not the only one. The point of my being here today is to create the conversation. You're all here together. It's an amazing time for you to talk with each other and say, how do we come up with new ideas? So I'm just here as part of the conversation for you to think through, how might we collaborate more and drive acceleration in all diseases? We find that the value equation and the theme of this critically important meeting can sometimes be controversial, right? And patients always look and go, oh, the value of my life, and how do you decide things like that? And having come from industry myself, we all understand drugs are expensive, research is expensive, and we have to figure out the value equation. But I am not your health economist. Instead, you have much wiser people covering that topic. What we've done at the MMRF is create the unifier, and what we found the unifier to be was acceleration and efficiency. The unifier is acceleration because every patient gets up in the morning for one reason. They put their feet on the ground believing somebody is going to cure their disease in their lifetime. And every industry partner and payer, we all want the patients to get the right treatments at the right time. Even when you see someone as amazing as Kent Damon, who lives here in Boston, he literally on that time had been relapsing. And we all want to say to ourselves, if only we could get it right in the beginning, so that we didn't have to say, well, what hasn't he been on, and what drug should he go on, what combination should he go on? In a world of precision medicine, could we get it right from the start? Because imagine how fast and how efficient that would be, and how wonderfully it would drive the value equation in a way that would make all of us incredibly happy. So today, we'll use myeloma as a model for you. And the reason that many people look at myeloma as a model is twofold. One is because we're highly representative of other diseases and other cancers, and the second is because of the outcomes that we've seen. So let me first talk about the first. When you actually see the myeloma populations, it is unbelievably heterogeneous. So there are some cancers where it's one mutation, one aberration, and you can develop that drug and you can make tremendous progress. I wish we could say that in myeloma. No, it's incredibly complex. But most cancers really are. And even if we have found the standard of care, what we give patients the first go-around, and I really think we have done a pretty good job of that in myeloma, the truth is, as patients, we all relapse. We don't ask ourselves, if I relapse, we ask ourselves, when will my relapse happen? So that does get a scary way to live with the disease. But when you look on the bottom three, what you see is a little more of the positive side, in that we do understand the genomics of our disease. And as we start to understand the genomics of our disease, we also find pharma industry coming in and working side by side with us. And it has been an incredible partnership for us. And we find the entire community around us to be quite engaged. So when you look at the actual outcomes of our disease, we've had, since we launched, 7 drugs approved in multiple myeloma since 2003. In the world of oncology, that is quite good and remarkable. We've also improved the 5-year survival of our patients by 60%, from about 28% when I was diagnosed to about 45% today. And we have tripled the lifespan. So again, even the video is already out of date. It was not that shot that long ago, but now patients are living not the 3 years when I was diagnosed, but more like 8 or 9 today. And the hope continues because we have 3 amazing drugs at FDA right now, 2 antibodies, and ixazomib made by Millennium, and then 27 treatments in phase 3. So the pipeline is unbelievably encouraging. So when you look at an uncommon, crazy heterogeneous cancer like this, it's so complex, and you say, well, wow, how did they all get that done? The truth is, it was the model and the community. So when you look at the myeloma community, we started, I will never forget this because I was diagnosed in 1998. My husband and I went around for second opinions. There were only 4 centers really doing work in myeloma. One of them was Dana-Farber, Moffitt, Toronto, Arkansas, but there weren't a lot of places to go if you were a myeloma patient. Today, you look at our community, and it's remarkable. We have an abundance of academic centers. Myeloma's gotten easier to treat with amazing medications, so the community has stepped in, incredible industry and pharma partners, and then technology partners. And if you look at the left side of that slide, we thank you, Massachusetts, for the amazing work that you've done. There's many partners, and not all of them are even listed on here, that are working with us in Massachusetts, and so we thank you for all the great work that you've been doing. So we take that community, and we are a trusted third party that is a convener. So that's what we do. We keep bringing the community in, but we're also business people, right? So when you look at us, we constantly are writing business plans and scientific plans. And the reason we do that is because how are you going to go out and raise the money for your myeloma world if you don't have a really great business plan around you? So that business plan, and by the way, we had to raise about $300 million is what we've raised for the myeloma community so far. So when you look at our plan, the things that we're always challenged with are, what are the obstacles we're facing? So when we first started, like I said, there were only 4 centers and not many scientists working in our field. I remember going to one ASH meeting, and there weren't even any publications on myeloma. Now we can go and we'll be the plenary, and there's so much happening. So we had to raise money and start to develop a grant program and put research in our name. And while many foundations are doing that today, this was '98. So we were way ahead of the curve and saying, you know what, we love industry. I came from industry. This is the place that we're going to play. Brought all the scientists together. But then the next obstacle we had to address in our business plan was saying, it's not that they don't want to collaborate. They really do. There's just no great means by which they can collaborate. So what we decided to do was build our own collaborative models. And once again, that's very unique for a foundation. Many organizations, we fund an academic center, and they might be the pivotal point for everybody else to grow from that. We actually build all of our systems, and our team, we look like a virtual biotech. So we have teams of MDs, PhDs, Masters of Public Health, fundraisers. That's why it's a little bit more of a complex organization to run, but it's highly effective. So our systems are, the first collaborative model we built was a tissue bank where we asked all of our centers to provide tissue into one major center. It's housed at the Mayo Scottsdale. And then we also built our own clinical network, which started as 4 centers, all signing membership agreements abiding by how we would work together for tissue banking, conducting phase 1 and 2 trials, how we'd publish, how we'd use PR, anything. The first 4 centers took a year to sign on, but anybody that comes into our clinical network now, it's pretty much a take it or leave it, and so we can continue to expand that clinical network. And then as we moved further, we said, okay, this is amazing. We have a clinical network. We've done a tremendous amount of work, but we realized with all the data coming in, myeloma is not one disease, but it's more like 10. So then we said the complexity of the disease was going to drive us to create more data. So we launched a study that is highly unique and worth mentioning here. It's called COMPASS. The COMPASS study allows us to get bone marrow biopsies from myeloma patients at the moment of diagnosis, before they are treated, which is a tough window to get patients that are being told they have a still fatal disease. We follow those patients into remission, and we do more biopsies and find out about minimal residual disease. And we follow them again into relapse, and we sequence them again and again. And it's that beautiful genomic, clinical, longitudinal data that is now driving our data bank. It's a $40 million study that we had to take on to do this. But it was critical that we have that data. It's hard to get everybody to share their data. But what we ended up doing once we pulled that data together was we then worked with Genospace here in Massachusetts, and we developed a gateway by which all of our data is pushed out into the public domain for everybody to share. And we did build a pre-competitive consortium around COMPASS as well, where 4 pharmaceutical partners, I know Millennium is one, Amgen, BMS, Janssen, all worked with us, and they get an early look at the data, just a quick look before we start. And they funded half of the program, and we funded the other half through philanthropy. Incredibly, incredibly exciting venture that we've taken on, and now those things are providing new clues in myeloma all the time. So what does the system look like visually? Our system looks like this. It's a data bank that comes in through one-off tissue, through a genomic initiative, then this gorgeous longitudinal tissue and data that comes in from the COMPASS study. Sadly, as more and more patients relapse, the data becomes even more interesting and compelling for the scientists. We then push all that data out with a researcher gateway. We also build our own translational center with a number of the centers, and then we have our own clinical network called the MMRC, 22 centers strong that we oversee, and we have CROs in our office that work with that group. And then we bring it all back to the patients, half the patients in our database, but we've moved further than that, actually asking patients to sign in based off of what kind of myeloma do they have? Are you 414 or P53? Are you in remission? Where are you? And then they all talk to each other, and we can post trials and information on that specific patient gateway. So that's what the model looks like, and when you look at the numbers, which again are compelling, you'll see 4,000 samples in the tissue bank, 1,000 patients. We're almost done the COMPASS trial in terms of getting all the patients in, are still enrolling. 300 scientists constantly talking on the gateway, 22 centers. They've actually done 60 phase 1 and 2 trials of 30 different drugs. We open those trials 60% faster than if pharma does it alone. And when we did COMPASS, we went to 100 centers to get that study done. So we have a breadth of information on who sees the highest number of myeloma patients and who's doing the best work in the community. And then again, on the patient side, trying to bring them all into community gateways to raise their hand by the profile that they really have. So what does it mean when you're looking at a target? This is just one example that we found in 2011 doing our first genomic initiative. Nobody knew BRAF was a myeloma target. It was actually our genomic sequencing with the Broad Institute and TGen that found that. It was published in Nature. Clinicians started seeing it. They started treating patients with a melanoma drug, started seeing clinical responses, drove it out, finding out more information in our COMPASS trial, realized that BRAF truly is in 8% of myeloma patients, realized a lot more about that target, and now we're opening a more effective trial this year in our clinical network on a BRAF target, which is truly interesting, but like I said, myeloma is heterogeneous, so we still have many druggable targets that we want to go after and pursue. So we're not one to rest on our laurels. It's really important for us to tell you how we continue to grow and how we continue to build the system. First and foremost is the data bank. So remember, you're looking left to side, and then the patients are at the bottom. On the data bank side, we'll still have the COMPASS study information coming in, but now we're working with Michigan on a CLIA grade assay so that we can take 500 relapsed patients and collect more genomic data even on those patients. And in addition to that, we will be starting a patient registry so we can collect nearly all the myeloma patients and gather information on them as well. And that's the data bank side. But as you move to the middle side, which we call the Learning Center, which is where we throw all the data out to the Researcher Gateway, we also make this data available to specific companies. And I think it's really important to point out GNS, which is here in Boston as well, in Collin Hill. We met at an Alexandria Summit meeting, and we love their concepts and what they're doing. So GNS now has our data. And what they're doing with it is they're identifying all of the myeloma pathways and laying those out for us and doing all the modeling of our work. And what's even more exciting about what they're doing is on April 10th, we co-host a data jamboree where we invite all of the academic centers and all the companies that are part of the pre-competitive consortium and others to literally come in together, look at the pathways, and just, again, start the conversation, start the hypotheses. These are the things that we do, we fund, we support, that drive so much acceleration to the system because we are business people and scientists and clinicians don't have time to figure all this out. We try to get the money, put the model together, and make it really easy for everybody to work together. And so we love spearheading programs like this. And as a patient myself, I find these things one of the most exciting that we're doing, to be honest with you. But in addition to that, you always want to be looking for the right drugs for your disease. So we also are very good at business development. We live and breathe at every medical meeting with our own team, scouring every company's pipeline for what they have that might be used against one of our targets. But what we find really interesting is immunotherapy is taking off in every cancer today, and we want to accelerate immunotherapy in myeloma. Well, when you look at our model, again, going from that data bank to the learning center to the clinic, what's fascinating is now you're going back in and looking for immune-based markers. So now we have that information. We can look at information retrospectively in our tissue bank. We can look at information prospectively as we move new ideas out. So we're not limiting ourselves. We've built the system. The system works whether it's a genomic issue or an immune-based issue. And we're really trying to work with many new partners to make sure we get that part right, too, because on the immune side, I think we're all still learning a little bit and catching up. But these are all the drugs that we are in discussions with right now and moving forward so that in our clinical network, we're always looking at these combinations and approaching them on behalf of the patients that we serve. So that brings me to the final piece of the model, which was on the bottom, and the patients. And ironically, I stand here today in front of you as a patient telling you now I think the patients are on the critical path. And I say that because as a patient myself, I knew my genomics early on. I knew I was a translocation 414 in myeloma. That was really important when I knew that because I ended up being one of the first patients ever on Velcade. And I know you're honoring Mark Levin, and the folks at Millennium, honestly, one of the best partners we've had the joy of working with forever. I ended up being one of the first patients on Velcade and Revlimid prior to my transplant with my sister. And to this day, I still believe that induction therapy was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And now most 414 patients know you want to be on a proteasome inhibitor in myeloma. So we have to know these things. And yet, we did this qualitative research amongst our patients, and I was shocked. There were so many times I wanted to reach through the phone and go, oh no, don't, you've got to ask this question, you've got to go there, you have to do this. And I knew just by talking to them, I could extend their lives. They weren't handling it quite right. And sometimes I feel like a little bit like the concierge of the rich and famous, because if you're sitting there and you're running the company, only certain people can get in to talk with me. There's 300,000 people in our database. I can't talk to everybody. I I feel this incredible need to democratize cancer, I guess is what I'm saying, where we all know the journey. When you look across the bottom, and we are taking this journey now, we literally put it and said, these are the 10 spots where we think every patient's getting it wrong in this world of precision and immune-based therapy. And what are the knowledge gaps, and how do we fix them? So, you know, one was completely obvious. How long it took them all to get diagnosed was really scary in myeloma, so that was a problem in itself. The second was nobody, so few asked for a second opinion. I was even shocked by that. None of them knew where to go. I mean, that's not that hard to find. I'm always saying to people, well, who sees the most myeloma patients? Are they a member of ASH? Did they go to the last meet? There's ways to figure out who you want to be with. And then when we got into things like, do you know your marker? Do you know your M-spike? No. So now we're doing quantified research. I don't think this journey is that different, by the way. In my own family, you know, my father had kidney cancer, my mother has melanoma, I have another family member with breast cancer, I have myeloma. At any one time, I'm concierging everyone. I feel like these questions are very consistent from one to the next. So if we could get this right, if we could help the patient, it would be amazing. And the amount of speed and efficiency we could put into the system would be unbelievable. As I say to everybody, you don't have to be able to visualize what a translocation of 414 is. You just know that's who you are. And then you know that your treatment might be different. So I see this world, and I think this is important for the state and everybody as you start looking for all of the partners that you want to work with, because I think we've built this amazing community where industry, biotech, and academia, the community, FDA, NIH, I mean, we are all working together. But it hit me when I was doing all this patient work that there's a much easier way to do this. So I went out west. And I have to say, I ended up talking to Google, who's here as well, and Facebook, and Illumina, and Salesforce, and all of them, to start to identify how do you simplify the world for the patient, and how do we start to bring all of this together. And I do see a world where patients do understand the importance of knowing their cancer, their subtype, their risk, their mutation. I do see a world where patients really understand the more data we give, the more precise our journey is going to get. The more precise our journey gets, the more we can somewhat standardize it. The more we can standardize it, the more we can use apps and other things that are going to remind patients of what they need to be doing, where they need to be going, and how they end up bringing all of this back together so more data comes into the system. And I think that, too, is going to drive tremendous speed and efficiency into the system. So when I show you this photograph, I do it because I want you to realize the impact that we all have in the future. I don't think there's been a more exciting time in healthcare. It's unbelievable what we are all going to accomplish together. And I think you can see this as one model that can move things forward. But as I said to you, there are many models out there, and I'm sure you all have a million ideas. And I hope my conversation today just spurred those so that while you're all here together, you can have those really important conversations. But I would be remiss if I didn't use the time at the podium right now to also thank each and every one of you, because one of those photos is a Boston College cheerleader who's a junior at Boston College, and that's my daughter. She was one when I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. She was my inspiration to do every single thing I did with this foundation. I also have a son who's 18. He's going to head to Lafayette. I tried to get him to Boston College, but he wants to play baseball. So he's headed to Lafayette. I have lived the most amazing life, a life I never, ever expected. And I have been given so much time and so much value. And I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you, because I am standing here today because of companies that supported drug development, and I have been on many of those treatments. I am treated at Dana-Farber. I am up here all the time, and I just want you to know, if you make me feel this way, and I am this grateful, multiply it by thousands and millions, and please know the importance of the work you're doing and how much we appreciate it. So thank you.
How awesome was that, huh?
Thank you.
I'll be reaching out. We're going to have a conference call set up with their son within an hour. He's not going to Lafayette. Come on. How about we have a couple minutes for a couple questions. We have about 5 minutes left. Does anyone have a question or a comment for Kathy? Yes, right in the middle. Microphone's coming your way. Please say your name.
Susan Ward, it's always great to hear you speak. One of the things that you pointed out was that at the very beginning of your journey, there was really very little in the way of science being done. And really, you were the impetus. Your organization was the catalyst for so much more that happened. Very often now in other disease areas, there's already a lot of research. You already have the KOLs, et cetera, et cetera. It's more entrenched and becomes more of a challenge then to be able to bring that kind of sharing and leverage. Have you got any thoughts on how you would handle that if that had been your situation?
Yeah, so one of the things that's the most important when you're running one of these groups and you're trying to bring everybody together, it's all about people. So I can't tell you how many times I knew exactly who had the passion of the patient, who had the ability to innovate, and I always reached out to those people. Many of them here. So an example would be when we were launching the COMPASS trial, we were asking every academic center to give up intellectual property. We were throwing all that data out into the public domain. And I initially couldn't get any academic centers to sign on. And so we went out to the community and we got Hackensack and Virginia and everybody else to sign on. And then we came back to academia and said, come on, we're going to get it done one way or another. Don't you want to work with us on it? And it was Washington University that signed on. They just had a guy that really understood what we were trying to do in COMPASS. When we built the pre-competitive consortium piece of that, I knew it was going to be Deborah Dunsire at Millennium that would sign on first. I just knew her well enough, so I just went right to her. So every time we go to build something new and have a new idea of what we want to jumpstart, we write the business plan, and then we sit down as a team and as a community, we go, who do we think is actually going to be aligned to get that done for us? And you look for the first person, or sometimes when you're sharing, the first two. The other piece we do is we give them great public relations. Like if you're first, we always send out a press release of us standing together because we want the companies to know that somebody raised their hand to innovate and they did the right thing that went a little around the current system.
How about a big round of applause?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I mean, that was amazing. You are a rock star. That's fabulous. And, you know, Kathy, that really sets the stage for our annual meeting. So we're so happy that you shared your story. As a cystic fibrosis dad and my involvement with the CF Foundation, that's what brought me into this career. And you're a role model. And nothing's more powerful than the passion of a patient. And you really set the stage for us, so thank you for that.